the first thing that came to mind was that there's really two ways to go here with the water having information. First is that it's a storage bank of information of some kind, but the next question in my mind, which you just answered, was: is it just a storage bank, or is it a transmitter of information as well, or a receiver of information? Right? Because the idea is in theory you could somehow put information into the energy that is bound within the water, and then maybe that stays there. But then the experiment where they had the DNA sequence separated from the water, that wouldn't have transmitted in any way, right? Because it wasn't touching. But what you were saying earlier with the dilution, in theory, like in order for that water to maintain its memory, it would have had to have transmitted it to the fresh water that was going in, and then that water would then have propagated, I guess, the data in some capacity to the new water, and then it just keeps, recurring. Which means that water is not just a storage bank of information. It is a transmitter, receiver. It somehow is communicating with other water in some capacity. In that case, and if that's the case, then that leads me to think about some of these. I'm hesitant to say studies while sitting in front of a scientist like yourself, but I've seen. I don't know if they were formal studies, scientific studies that were done or not, but I've seen examples of plant life where they would grow plants, and then similar to the water, where once they freeze it and the crystals, if you played heavy metal music, the crystals would be they would look very chaotic versus something classical. Then the crystal form of or I should say the frozen form of the water would show something that looks very structured, like crystal form. And I've seen a very similar study where they would play classical music, or they would sing, to plants, and then those would just flourish and grow and just be abundant with life. And then others would be isolated. Other plants, these are plants we're talking about, would be isolated and exposed to heavy metal music or words of hatred, things like that, and those would die. And then I saw they took it a step further, and they're like, we're not going to do any music. We're not going to do any sound. We're just going to like think, these positive thoughts and negative thoughts, right, toward one and the other, and similar conditions occurred. And now I'm thinking, well, it almost seems like potentially the source of that is maybe the water that those plants are living from, right? That they're deriving their life from, right? It's the water, and so then that makes me think, how much more, for us, if we were to just, I'm extrapolating here, but you can kind of see the thread of thought, like why is this important that we're talking about this, right? I'm trying to bring it back to us and our health. It's like, wow, is it possible that, the human body is made of 50 or 60% water, right?
Or more.
And none of it is the water in this cup. It's something different, right? I think that's the premise of the book that you've written. It's not gas, it's not ice, it's not necessarily liquid water, it's something else. And we'll get into what that is in a moment here. But if that thing somehow carries memory, somehow transmits, receives information, somehow is tied to consciousness, well, that is. I think that's potentially one of the most foundational discoveries or pieces of information that would underpin an entire paradigm shift of how we understand ourselves and our health. Would you?
Well, not only would I agree, but I think that what you say is foundational for science. We don't have all of what you say. I agree with, and I've seen many studies that show, for example, sound and human health, sound and health of plants. All living things seem to be responsive to sound. And many people are studying it right now. People reporting at our conference each year.
But ultimately, sound. So I just want to make one comment here. So one thing that comes to mind is that sound is just everything is on the spectrum, right? So sound is effectively just one slice of this pie of energy form, right?
Yeah.
Just like light is a higher frequency slice of the same energy form, just different sliver. At least that's my understanding of it.
Well, the energy maybe is different, but yes, another kind of energy,
right? And then
different wavelength. Yeah.
And if that's the case, it seems to me like the way that consciousness is affecting things like water, similarly to how sound or light might affect water, it almost seems to me like consciousness is potentially on that energy spectrum to some capacity.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are so many studies that demonstrate what you're talking about, and I just want to make one remark about that.
I want to share what this podcast is all about. You see, I'm on this journey to design the healthiest home in the world. That's why I sit down with brilliant minds across biology, medicine, design, and more, all with one goal in mind: a home tuned to human biology. This is where I brainstorm, where we explore what it really means to create a home that heals. If that sounds like something you care about, hit subscribe, and let's see where this goes.